Okay, so now we're going to progress into the squat movement. So what exactly is a squat movement? For those of you guys who, you're familiar with the squat. A lot of you guys have heard of squat, but if I had to really break it down to what a squat is a simulation of sitting. You are simulating a squat movement. And I like that we're talking about the squat after talking about the hinge, because it is in essence a progression on the hinge, in the sense that the hinge really focuses more so on the hip, bending at the hip, flexion at the hip. But now when we're doing a squat, we're going to also include flexing at the knees. So we're not just going to bend here, we're also going to be bending here. So what we're doing is, I want you to imagine there is a stool or a chair, or better yet, get a stool or a chair or something you can sit on, and you're just going to practice lowering yourself. So again, it starts at the hips and then the knees respond, and you're lowering your hips as low as you can. Okay? So key thing here, right, is there's a difference between the hip hinge and a squat. See, with the hip hinge, you're only bending at the hip, and because you're only bending at the hip, what happens is your torso collapses. However, when you're doing a squat, the aim is to make sure that your torso does not collapse. So what we're going to do is we are going to hinge at the hips, bend at the knee, but we're still trying to keep our torso as upright as we can, right? Dropping our hips as low as you can, and then coming up. And then we repeat and up. I like to kind of put my hands out because they act a little bit like a counterbalance, right? But ideally, you don't necessarily need to, but ultimately you focus on sitting and keeping the chest up. And the reason I like doing this using a chair is because a chair is perfect, because when you sit down at a chair, using a chair, I recommend this. Get a chair, squat down until your butt touches the chair, and without relaxing, come straight up. Down until you feel that tap, and then come straight up. Your aim, again, similar to what we were talking about in the hinge, is being able to maintain that integrity of the spine. So you're going to go down, and then you're going to come right back up without any bending or bowing of the spine, right? So it's going to be down again and up, okay? There's a frontal view, because again, likewise, we want the knees above the ankles, right? We want alignment there and up, right? When I do squats, I tend to feel it more in my glutes more than anything than I do on my quads. Now, the more repetitions I do, I start to feel it in my quads, but ideally for me, because I consider the glutes, right? I consider the glutes to be the most important muscle in my lower body. So I'm always focusing on it. But ideally, you're trying to hit glutes, hamstrings, quads, calves, all of it when you're doing a lot of these movements. And the more you master them, you're going to start to be able to identify when each muscle is firing during what part of the movement. That's mastery, is when you start identifying, okay, this is when this muscle is kicking in, this is when this muscle is kicking in, right? So now we're going to incorporate the weight. So going back to handling the kettlebell. So with a kettlebell squat, this is where you're going to hold the kettlebell at the horns, right? So you can either hold the kettlebell right here, or you can hold it upside down, right? So I prefer to hold it upside down. So holding it upside down at the handles and going into my squat. Good thing about holding the weight in front of you is that because there's a weight in front of you, it naturally triggers your spine, or the muscles of your spine, to be more erect, because they're trying to resist bending. Okay, so from a side view, right here, down, and up. Same thing, maintain your breathing. I recommend looking forward and keeping everything under control. Good. One more. All right, so when you're doing this movement, the squat, again, it's maintaining integrity of the spine. The beauty is, and the reason why I keep talking about the spine, and you're not really going to hear me say too much about the core, because the core takes care of itself. The core will take care of itself if you just think about and focus on maintaining spinal integrity, keeping your spine as upright as you can, because what that naturally does, it naturally engages. So just testing it out, right? Where you are, wherever you are, go ahead and stand up and just elongate the spine like I've been talking about, keeping everything straight. And tell me, don't you naturally feel the muscles here turn on? Exactly. That's because in order for you to perform this movement, they got to do their job. So typically we tend to just try to focus on the muscle. Again, one of the reasons why I love using kettlebells, you focus more on the movement and then the muscle will take care of itself. Whatever muscle you're trying to, whatever movement you're trying to perform, your body will figure out what muscles to turn on in order to do it. And I promise you, whatever movement you can think about, you already have muscles there already pre-programmed to perform that movement, whether by themselves or as part of a whole set, working together to ensure that movement is possible. Whoever and whatever created us in such a genius way where it's all taken care of. It's all taken care of. There's no movement that you can think about that there is no way for your body to facilitate that. Still trying to figure out how to fly. I think we can do it. I kind of believe that, but that's not. Maybe in a later course, once I figure that out, we'll get there, right? So, so with the kettlebells again, and with the squat, you are simply just trying to maintain. I'm gonna hold it this way this time. I'm gonna hold it this way, right below the chin, and we're just gonna go down and up. Standing up tall, same thing, no slouching, just stand straight. See, naturally the weight wants to tip you down this way, but the muscles of the back keep you upright. And because they engage, the muscles in the midsection also engage. And let's talk a little bit again about the core muscles, right? So a lot of you guys are familiar with the rectus femoris. That's what we call the six-pack muscle, the one you see. But then we also have the oblique muscles. They're responsible for the rotation. But then we go into, underneath them, we have a muscle called the transverse abdominis, the TVA for short, right? This muscle is the deepest muscle. It's literally the muscle that is right above the organs, right? That muscle is like a natural corset, or those waist trainers you see a lot of women walking around with. You already have a muscle that does that job. The issue is when that muscle is weak, that's when you have the slouching and the poor posture. That's when you have the back pain. That's when you have the guts. A lot of time when you see people with guts, it's really because the muscle that's right above the organs has become so distended and stretched that some of the organ, the intestines, and a lot of the fat around that area is just hanging down. But it's learning how to stand upright, and what that does is it engages that muscle. It forces that muscle to work. So a lot of times, like when you see guys putting on those big belts so they can lift those heavy weights, or you see a lot of women walking around with waist trainers, you already have that. Again, the creator in their infinite wisdom created that for you. So you already have it. You just need to learn to connect to it. And one of the easiest ways that I found to connect to it is just focusing on elongating your spine. So when you're doing those movements, that muscle is under control. Whether you're doing the hinge or you're doing the squat or the next exercise that we're going to go into, which is the press.